The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.
Heard any good stock tips lately? Even if you're deaf or hard of hearing, special programs can help level the field of opportunity. Arthritis in the knee could put you on the sidelines or even under the knife, but there may be ways to keep your options open. It robs your memory and destroys your life. Alzheimer's disease. Why is there hope for a better tomorrow? Join us as we get right to the heart of matters affecting your life today on Today's Health.
This program brought to you in part by Merrill Lynch, serving the needs of the deaf and hard of hearing population. Generation 2 USA, makers of the Unloader knee brace, and an educational grant from Sigma Tau Pharmaceuticals.
Getting through life day to day is hard enough without having to cope with a disability. But millions of people must deal with impairments in their vision, hearing, speech, or mobility, as well as everything else that life throws at them. Hello, I'm Kathleen Sullivan, and this is Today's Health. Those of us with all of our faculties often complain that life is tough, but oh, it can be so much tougher.
Communication. You can't overstate its importance in the world today. The ability to pick up the phone and communicate easily can often help us through many of life's challenges. But what happens when the challenge is to speak or hear? Currently in the United States, there are nearly 2 million people who are deaf and about 18 million who are hard of hearing. You probably don't even think twice about the simple act of calling for a pizza delivery. But if you're deaf, hard of hearing, or speech impaired, that everyday meal option doesn't always exist.
I would ask one of my next door neighbors to make a phone call for me. I'd make the necessary discussions through my neighbor, and of course, neighbors can be nosy sometimes, and that was very humbling.
Sometimes people with disabilities take the lead in helping others in a similar situation. Take Chris Sullivan, for example. He's a deaf vice president at Merrill Lynch. He realized there were others like him who found it difficult to do something as simple as invest their savings. And he pioneered a whole new unit of the company to fill that need, the Deaf Hard of Hearing Investor Services Division.
When I became an analyst on Wall Street, I knew how difficult it was for many deaf people to do business with their financial advisors. And so that's why I set up a program to specifically address their needs. So I made this proposal to the senior management, and they were more than supportive. And we have set up teacher-wise in various facilities all over the country, as well as 13 toll-free teacher-wide amplification lines, so that deaf and hard of hearing people can be accessible to the firm.
Since Chris launched the Deaf Hard of Hearing program, it's expanded nationwide. The company now manages over $250 million in assets for deaf or hard of hearing clients.
We have 5 deaf financial consultants serving both deaf and hearing clients. And we also have over several hundred hearing financial consultants who also have deaf and hard of hearing clients on their books. You can't imagine what a relief it is for many deaf people to have the ability to communicate over phone lines with just about anybody.
Buy, sell, trade. Successfully navigating the financial markets is difficult enough when you can hear the tick of the ticker tape. It doesn't matter whether you're a bull or a bear. The easier it is to communicate, the easier it is to analyze your options and take your best shot.
Whether you want to become a wizard of Wall Street or simply build a nest egg for tomorrow, a disability should not affect your opportunity to the right investments. Fortunately, modern technology and special programs can now help level the playing field for people who have an impairment.
How many times a day do you use the telephone? It used to be if you were deaf, speech impaired, or hard of hearing, this everyday tool could be a difficult or even useless means of communication. But now, federal law has changed that. Addressing one of the four major components of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the telecommunication industry was required to set up the telephone relay service so that people with hearing and speech impairments could have equal access.
And it allows deaf and hard of hearing people especially to have the freedom to communicate with just about anybody.
I can call our financial counselors who are deaf, like me. And it's very important to the deaf community to have other people working out in the community like us.
When someone calls the relay service, a specially trained relay operator acts as a facilitator. If the person calling is speech impaired, the operator reads off the teletype and voices the conversation. If the calling person cannot hear, the relay operator types what the other party is saying.
Relay is like the invention of the wheel for the deaf community. Never before could we place the order for a pizza or calling up your financial consultant, discuss your financial security. So it's made a tremendous difference in the lives of so many deaf and hard of hearing people today.
Teletypewriters, called TTYs, allow a caller to type and read as they hold a conversation. The operator does not act like an interpreter. He or she voices and types verbatim whatever is said. Carryover lines, one called a VCO or voice carryover, allows an oral deaf person to speak for themselves. The other, an HCO or hearing carryover, allows the speech impaired user to hear what's being said.
I'm really proud that we at Merrill utilize this service for the benefit of communicating with our clients.
Our financial well-being and security can have a significant impact on how we feel. Programs, equipment, and services that empower people with impairments can give them equal access to all investment options, so that their only challenge is picking a winner.
Arthritis in the knee. A walk in the park becomes a painful ordeal. What can you do to cope with the pain and live life to the fullest? Next on Today's Health.
At some point in our evolution, Homo sapiens began walking on two legs and separated themselves from the four-legged mammals. It's a safe bet that not long after that, the first knee problems developed. We may no longer live in caves and we don't use our legs to escape the bears. So why do our knees still hurt?
It doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete, a weekend warrior, or a confirmed couch potato. Our knees are some of the most used and abused joints in our body. And if arthritis flares up in those joints, the simple act of walking can become a very painful ordeal.
It can require physical therapy, exercise, pain medications, topical analgesics, mechanical devices, and even surgery. Each one of those pain management options has its own set of benefits and limitations.
All of the medications that we use to treat osteoarthritis have some rare side effects. Unfortunately, these side effects are more common in the elderly patient, which is the most common patient that we see with osteoarthritis. Some of the side effects include ulcers in the stomach, kidney damage, and liver damage. Although these are fairly rare, we have to be very careful with our medications that we treat patients with osteoarthritis.
I cope with pain by taking anti-inflammatory medications when the pain is severe. Otherwise, I just kind of tough it out and walk through it.
When talking about osteoarthritis and the pain it causes in the knee, it's important to understand how the pain develops and persists.
The knee joint is basically composed of three separate compartments. There's the two compartments where the thigh bone connects to the shin bone, and that we call the femoral tibial components. And there's both a medial side and a lateral side. The third component is where the kneecap or the patella moves up and down when the knee is moving in its flexion and extension motions. Most of the pain that patients perceive in osteoarthritis comes from the medial joint component. This model has taken the kneecap or the patella away, and we can see then there are two sides of the knee joint. This is the medial side and this is the lateral side. In this instance, this patient has lost cartilage on the medial side, and what often happens then is that side bears the brunt of the load, and when the patient walks, the majority of the force from weight bearing goes on that diseased side of the joint. And if it gets bad enough, the leg actually starts to angle, and you see people who are bow-legged. They actually have a curvature at their knee joint. So one of the techniques to try to improve the patient's symptoms is to either do surgery or do bracing that would change the configuration to take the load off of the diseased side of the joint.
I wear the knee brace quite often, most often when I'm playing tennis, and if my knee is aggravated, I'll play it while I wear it while I play golf.
We can run, dance, walk, and even stand around and not think much about it until it hurts. And then we come to the painful realization that our knee joints affect every step we take. And if we can make each small step less painful, it's a giant leap toward a better day.
It's hard to believe that the aches and pains from chronic arthritis can get so bad that surgery actually looks like the less painful alternative. But surgery should only be considered as a procedure of last resort. There are many other things that you can do in the meantime.
The human body is custom-made for motion. Our agility, mobility, and dexterity all depend on the complex interaction between our bones, ligaments, and muscles. Unfortunately, arthritis can inflame our joints and impede our natural motion. A recent design innovation in knee braces, like this one called the Unloader, manufactured by Generation 2, corrects that unbalanced situation.
The primary purpose of the cast is to fit well on the thigh and the shin so that they are stabilized. The most important strap on the unloading brace is the strap that comes around from the behind and goes through a loop, and then the patient relaxes the knee and tightens up the strap and comes across with the Velcro. When this happens, the knee brace actually causes the leg to straighten out, and what that happens in this situation is taking the load off of the medial part of the knee, which in this individual patient is the part where the arthritis is.
The effectiveness of the utilization of the unloaded brace is that it definitely keeps people from going on to the surgical intervention, either an arthroscopy or a total joint replacement.
Undergoing surgery is usually a measure of last resort. Most people want to avoid the risks of an intrusive surgical procedure, and surgery can also be very expensive.
There's a vast array of treatment that can be performed prior to any surgery for osteoarthritis. And the realm is from injections, limiting an activity, utilizing a brace, to taking anti-inflammatory agents by mouth prior to any surgical intervention.
It's very important for me to avoid another surgery. I've already had several, and every time they go in there, they take another little piece and part of me out of there. I'm a young guy, and I'd rather prolong that as long as humanly possible. I do know that artificial joints wear out. My mother has had 2 knee replacements already, and one has already loosened up, and I suspect she'll need to have that joint replaced very, very soon.
The pain from arthritis in the knees can literally cripple a person. We don't yet know how to cure arthritis, so the best we can do is to try and help reduce the pain.
The degenerative changes caused by osteoarthritis often alter the structure of the joints. A mechanical device that can compensate for the alteration may provide a non-systemic way to relieve pain and hopefully avoid surgery. If so, we can measure the economic advantages in dollars and cents, but the human benefit could be priceless.
Yes!
It's one of the most baffling and deadly illnesses known to science, Alzheimer's disease. It destroys your memory and devastates your life. Where is there help? Why is there hope? Stay with us on Today's Health.
may have heard someone tell you, Mom's become so forgetful lately, or Grandpa got lost the other day in his own home. Loss of memory and problems with orientation aren't always mere signs of old age. They can be symptoms of a relentless degenerative disease called Alzheimer's.
Memories. As we grow older, they can become far more precious than our personal possessions. But our memory is more than just a trunk where we store the past. It's a vital function of our brain and affects eating, breathing, nearly every bodily function. And it affects who we are. For nearly 4 to 5 million people in this country, however, their memory and other intellectual processes are in jeopardy due to Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's disease is a disease in which brain cells die prematurely and progressively and cause memory loss and general intellectual decline. It really is an unknown cause at this point. We have some clues, however. There are several genetic mutations which regularly cause Alzheimer's disease when they occur in families. Then there's still a huge number of unknown factors that seem to contribute to Alzheimer's disease. But it is a disease. It is not something that simply happens because of old age. Recently, we've gotten very interested in early onset of Alzheimer's disease, that is, patients who have the disease already between ages 45 and 65. These are individuals who are in their prime of their professional or social activities, and they're cut down in a way that is more devastating to them and to their family members and to their businesses and their communities than when it happens in a person who's already 75 and where there is a certain expectation that memory loss may be coming. Alzheimer's is a very variable disease. People can go from first symptom to final outcome or death within 2 years or 22 years.
The only way to diagnose Alzheimer's in a living patient is through a process of elimination. We must first rule out any other medical conditions that could be causing the symptoms before we come to the diagnosis of probable Alzheimer's. There are many theories about the causes and pathology of the disease, but one thing is very clear. Alzheimer's is mentally debilitating and financially devastating.
Forgetfulness is the most characteristic symptom of Alzheimer's disease. You can add to that, as more and more brain cells die, the inability to learn new information, the inability to carry out a sequence of events, loss of verbal facility. The person may not think of common words anymore. They may want to tell you something about their watch and they can point to a watch, but the word doesn't come out. Still later on, words tend to disappear altogether. But it shouldn't be thought that the person can't understand because they can't talk. Their feeling capabilities are intact until way, way late into the disease. Their ability to understand continue much longer than their ability to form words that express those feelings.
Right now, we're in what's called the decade of the brain, and yet the organ that controls every bodily function is still very much a mystery. And Alzheimer's, the disease that destroys the brain, remains a baffling puzzle.
No words can describe the sadness and pain of watching a loved one decline from an incurable disease. Often the only hope lies in experimental research and testing. Choosing to participate in a study may not only help the patient, but millions of others all over the world.
Beverly's neurologist suggested that I take her to a test program, and she was accepted. And every week we went back for pills, the testing, both mentally and physically, to see that the pills were not hurting her, and it gives her hope. And as a matter of fact, it gives me hope. And so we're moving forward rather than sitting back and taking what could be handed to us.
The challenge in fighting Alzheimer's is to discover a compound, a medication, or some other treatment that can interfere with the degeneration, supplement for the losses, or even possibly restore damaged areas of the brain.
If we can significantly slow down the progression of the disease, I think we can retain people in a functioning role for many, many more years. And in fact, we have some evidence from data on trauma to the brain that the brain, if the disease progresses only slowly, can take over functions of those cells that have died by collateral channels, by other channels handling the same information. And for this reason, a separate study focusing only on younger Alzheimer's patients between ages 45 and 65 is now underway to really test this hypothesis.
What is the hope? This test program doesn't say they're going to cure it. And I live in hope that while all of this is going on, number one, I'm giving her a better day than she could have without it. And that secret drug will come down the pike that she is not far enough gone to take and be cured.
There is no cure for Alzheimer's disease, and existing treatments do very little to slow its progression. It rapidly reduces mentally and physically healthy people down to an incapacitated state. To conquer this disease, research and testing are more than critical. They're our only hope.
In the 60s, Martin Luther King gave us the phrase, "We shall overcome." Those inspiring words might now be applied to our struggle to find cures and treatments for incurable diseases. Although the human body may currently succumb to the devastation of terminal illnesses, we can take heart in the hope that eventually the human spirit will triumph. For more information on any of our stories, visit our internet website at www.vstar.com. I'm Faith Daniels. Join us again next time as we get right to the heart of the matters affecting your life on Today's Health.
To purchase a complete written transcript or a videotaped copy of this or any edition of Today's Health, write to this address or call 1-800-877-7769.
This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.